the informed investor. Thanks to Century 21 agents, defying mediocrity and delivering extraordinary experiences.
11 minutes to 10. We know there's lots of signals today that the housing market is on the move. We do this every Monday night with Warren McCarthy, who's the CEO of Century 21, to track what's happened over the weekend. Warren, good evening to you.
Yes, good evening, John. It's been a terrific weekend. I know we've got the footy finals around, but the auction market is well and truly powering along at the moment. Sydney had an 83.1% clearance rate for its 522 auctions, and Melbourne was just behind it with 76.6%. And although it put 769 properties to auction over the weekend. Now, Brisbane's bounced back, John, 60.3% clearance rate, and Adelaide showing very strong auction clearance figures of 76.2%. And Perth, not traditionally an auction environment, but just under 43% clearance. Now, the interesting statistic here, John, is that overall the weighted average for the capital cities around the country is 77% as a clearance number. The same time last year, it was 55%. So it does certainly ring true that we're well and truly on a market that's moving forward. And, you know, I did hear today that we're underpinned by the news that the borrowing levels are the highest they've been in years, which is big news.
Yeah, we reported that earlier on the Money Show, those very high borrowing levels. So the market does seem to be moving. Before I get to the deal, I was going to ask you a question. You mentioned the footy finals. Let's say, and I know let's say at least the prelim will be held on a Saturday afternoon in Melbourne. Let's say hypothetically you've got Richmond or Collingwood playing on a Saturday afternoon in Melbourne. Brisbane's playing a big final at Suncorp in, there in Brisbane, or maybe you've got Parramatta playing the Roosters in a big final there on a Saturday afternoon. Would that influence whether you'd actually put your auction on, say, at 3 o'clock while the game's on?
Well, let's see what the numbers do, because I do have some numbers there on the weekend just gone, and we might compare that to see what actually happened.
All right, let's wait and see. All right, very interesting.
In the inner east of Melbourne, the Richmond-Collingwood area, they had a 77% clearance rate on the weekend, and Parramatta, you mentioned in Sydney, 82.1%. So all goes well for the marketplace. Yeah. You know what? If it's a property that's well worth attending an auction with, people will turn up and bid. At the moment, there is a lack of supply of good quality stock for people to bid at, and so they're turning up in droves. And I'm seeing that our friends at Cooley Auctions are saying that they've got now approximately 8 bidders per auction going to the marketplace, which is tremendous news.
So grand final weekend, either Parramatta, if it's Parramatta in the grand final, they'll be going nuts if that happens. And if it's Collingwood-Richmond, well, those areas will be going nuts. But you reckon you could still put a good property on, and maybe they'll spend more than they need to because they'll be caught up in the hype.
They could well be, and it is possible also, John, to be able to bid over the phone. So they may be at the footy and bidding on the property at the same time. So let's see what unfolds the next few weeks. Yeah,
and you think there's stock ready to go on the market? You think that issue is going to be dealt with in the weeks ahead?
I think as much. You know, the numbers that we watch are the new properties coming to market each and every week. That's been improving strongly over the past few weeks. It's certainly down on the same period last year, but it has improved by about 10 percentage points over the last 3 weeks. Okay.
Now, look, we know about, this is an interesting one, bridesmaid suburbs. Now, I know, and look, for people outside Sydney, I bought my house 25 years ago, and I was looking around Balmain, which of course would be very well known, very trendy, expensive in a suburb with a friend, and I just went the next suburb, which was Annandale. I thought I couldn't believe it seemed to be about half the price, bigger, wider streets, and it's taken off since then. So I guess the question is, you call them bridesmaid suburbs, don't you, adjoining the in-demand suburbs that are going to take off in the future?
Yeah, good choice. And, that's a great example with Annandale. And look, the bridesmaid tag is just that. People should be looking at the suburbs that sit alongside or nearby the more popular suburb. In that case, it may have been the Balmain suburb. And look, there's plenty of examples to look at. Where I live down in the south of Sydney, in a place called Cronulla, there's a suburb next door to Cronulla called Woolooware. And it's a great place. It's got a train station, certainly close to the beach. And
nice golf course.
Upgrading. Lovely golf course. And, you can get apartments there now for around about that 700 to 900,000 mark, and houses from $1 million up to about 1.5 for a three-bedder. It's a good value. It certainly sits within that particular bridesmaid tag, if you please. I looked at another place there, John, in Brisbane called Strathpine. You may know it, north of Brisbane in the Moreton Bay area. And again, there's an area that's got a lovely shopping centre, great play areas for the children if you're a family. The price-to-income ratio for that particular area is in the affordable bracket. And what that means is a median value sitting at around $415,000 for a three-bedroom house is certainly affordable in my book.
Okay, yeah, so you've got to look for those and pick them. It's very easy in hindsight, but you've got to try and pick it in advance, don't you?
You do, and some of the other statistics that I noticed coming out on the weekend in terms of median home values for the capital cities, I looked at Perth. Now, in August 2014, the median value in Perth was $512,500. In August 2019, it's $437,558. That's a drop of 15%. Now, for mine, I'm thinking, what a great opportunity to get in at a place that's come down 15% in its median value, but knowing full well that the infrastructure spend that the government's made in that capital city of Perth is extraordinary, and it should see a lot of upside in the near future.
Yeah, and if you're an investor, that's an interesting point you make, because there's all sorts of infrastructure being announced and under construction in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth. So if you're an investor, you can invest anywhere. So should you be looking at those maps and doing the Google search and saying, you know what, there's a train station going in there, and I figure that that's going to help people and that's going to make a difference. Can you get in early, or is that's the way you do it? Isn't
everything, you should do your research, and I think anything that's close to trains, to hospitals, the shopping centres, child mining centres, all of the things that we look for is, in our lifestyles, are well worth looking at in terms of your investment as well. And places like what I would consider a great investment opportunities for longer term is certainly in Perth, and even Darwin, who's had a very, very ordinary period of time in their shift in values of down 24% over the 5 years. But look, if you bought something there and held onto it for the next 10 years, I'm sure you'll see a lot of upside.
All right, Warren, thank you very much. We'll talk next week. We'll see what next weekend brings. Thank you. Very interesting today. Warren McCarthy there, CEO of Century 21.